Welcome to our regional Indian cookery course, this time featuring food from Rajasthan, and we're going to look at cooking a Rajasthani rustic style chicken curry, although there's a vegetarian option which we describe in our recipe cards where you can substitute the chicken on the bone here that we have with paneer. So we have sliced onions, we have tomatoes, we're using Scottish rapeseed oil. This would be a replacement for, in Rajasthan, probably would use mustard oil. Here are our whole spices, our first masala, which will be used to flavour the oil. Of note particularly are these Indian bay leaves. These are also called cinnamon leaves. They're from the cassia tree, which is part of the cinnamon family. We've got some black and green cardamom, cloves and whole black peppercorns. Then we'll be adding some garlic, ginger and sliced green chilli. And then our second masala with our ground spices, turmeric, Kashmiri chili powder, ground coriander, ground cumin and some mango powder. Again, the mango powder is a souring agent in our curry, and then some salt and some sugar just to get the flavour balance right towards the end. Okay, over to the stove. So we have our rapeseed oil heating up in the pan there, and our first step is to add our first masala, our whole spices, and they will heat through in the oil and flavour the oil for us before we add our onions. So let's just let those heat through a little bit before we move on. So we've got the whole spices sizzling away nicely now, so we're ready to add the next step, which is our sliced onions. So we'll pop those into the oil. And we just need to cook these until we get them nice and brown. Onions starting to take on a little bit of colour now, but we need to keep cooking these until they're really nice and brown. I can't emphasise the importance of getting the onions nicely caramelised, because that's what forms the base flavour of this curry. Okay, we're about 5 minutes in, and I hope you can see that our onions are browning nicely now. Now this is where we come to the next step, which is, in order to get a really nice sticky coating sauce with this curry, what we want to do is to puree some of these onions. You don't have to do this, but it will give you a nicer texture to the sauce. Now what we could do is we could take out some of these onions and whiz them in a food processor. Or alternatively, we could use a stick blender and do it here in the pan, and that's what I'm going to try and do here. But of course, we've got these cinnamon leaves and the big black cardamom pods, and we don't really want to break those down because we want to be able to take those out a little bit later on in the cooking stage. So what I'm going to do, I hope you can see this, is I'm just gathering up those whole spices, just to get them to one side. There's the other black cardamom. I'm going to turn the heat right down low now. There we go. In fact, and you can see that our onions there, I've got a nice bit of colour on them. So what we want to do now is to just try and blend those down a bit. So I'm going to turn the heat out for a moment, just for safety. I've got the onions gathered over to one side of the pan. There we go. I'm just going to plug my stick blender in. I'm lucky that I can do this right here on the stove, but of course I want everything turned out except that, and then I'm just going to give these a little bit of a whiz, just to break down, not all of the onions, but just approximately about half, I suppose. There we go. That's all we need to do, and that will just give us a nice texture to the sauce. Let's just get the excess out. There we are. And we'll relight the pan here. That's it. And we can carry on now with the cooking. So as I say, an alternative way will be to take it off the heat, take some of those onions out of the pan and whisk them in a food processor separately. Or if you don't have time, don't worry about it. It's just going to change the texture of that sauce slightly. Okay, so we're ready for our next ingredient now. We've got the the heat down nice and low, so we're going to add our garlic, ginger and our green chilli, and we're just going to cook that through. That just takes a couple of minutes. Okay, so that's our garlic and ginger cooked through. Now I'm going to turn the heat back up a little bit, and now we're going to add our second masala, our ground spices. We're going to just stir those in and then add a little bit of water. Two purposes for this. One is to stop the spices burning, and the other one is to gather up any bits that have stuck to the bottom of our pan. I'm using a non-stick pan here, so that doesn't happen so much. I do find a non-stick pan is quite useful when cooking with chicken. We try not to use too much fat in our recipes, and that can mean that cooking in a steel bottom pan with chicken, sometimes it sticks to the bottom of the pan. So as a compromise, using less fat in our recipes, we tend to use these non-stick pans. Right, so that just needs to cook for a wee while until the oil starts to sweat out a bit. Just take a couple of minutes. There we go, that's just a couple of minutes there, and you can see that's just started to shine and glisten. Basically the oil's separating out from the spice and onion mixture, and we're ready to add our tomatoes. So this is a mixture of fresh tomato and tinned tomato, chopped up. Stir that in, and we'll add a little salt. There we go. And now we just need to cook this through until the tomatoes broken down nicely. Okay, so our tomatoes softening down nicely. We're ready to add our chicken to this dish. So let's pop the chicken in. And so we've got two whole chicken legs here. These are large chicken legs that we're using, and it's thighs and the drumstick. You could use all thighs. It's whatever you prefer and whatever you can buy affordably at your local butcher's or supermarket. So we just need to cook this now until the chicken is nicely sealed and the mixture is starting to dry out a little bit. There we go. So that's had about 6 or 7 minutes now on a medium flame. We're starting to get a nice bit of colour on the chicken. It's not cooked through at all by any means, it's still raw inside, but we've just sealed the outside nicely, given it a little bit of colour, and our mixtures, our masalas just starting to dry out. So now is a good point we'll turn the heat down again, and we're going to add our water. And this is basically to keep it moist while it cooks in the oven. And we'll just stir that through and bring it back to the boil, and then we're going to pop it in the oven. Now we've got a preheated fan oven here at 160 degrees. You might want it a little bit hotter if it's a conventional oven, but we're going to pop that away in the oven now for about 40 minutes or until the chicken is nice cooked through and starting to come away from the bone. Okay, so that's 40 minutes in the oven. Let's just pop the lid off, and as you can see the chicken's come away nicely from the bone. We can just make sure that it's cooked through there over 90 degrees, so that's perfect. And you can see we've got a nice coating sauce there by whizzing down some of those onions. So before we serve it, we just need to add last ingredient, which is a little sugar, and then we'll give it a taste just to see if we need to adjust the seasoning at all. taste at the end. There we go, and that's perfect. That doesn't actually need any more salt or anything. So the only other thing I would do before serving is just fish out the bay leaves, the cinnamon leaves, and the whole black cardamom, and then we're ready to serve. So, Rajasthani rustic style curried chicken. I hope you enjoy it.